Boa tarde a todos e todas. Bem-vindos, bem-vindas ao segundo encontro da Ars Amatoria, Leituras de Ovídio. É com muita alegria que nesse segundo encontro, né, eu recebo três queridos colegas, amigos, Rodrigo, Sandra, Ewa. E Ewa, eu vou começar fazendo a apresentação, né, da nossa conferencista. Ewa é professora de latim no Instituto de Filologia Clássica da Mickiewicz University, em Poznań. Mickiewicz, né? Só lembrando, o grande escritor, poeta, muito admirado pelo nosso querido Machado de Assis. Né? O campo de pesquisa dela é a comédia romana e também o teatro romano, né? Mas em particular a comédia. Ela tem várias monografias devotadas à comédia, e em particular a Terêncio, traduções das comédias de Plauto, com introdução e notas, e também das peças de Terêncio. Ela foi premiada, né, com a melhor tradução de poesia em 2004, né, pelo jornal Literatura na Svieti, em inglês, ou em português, Literatura Mundial, né? um jornal, uma revista acadêmica muito importante na Polônia, né? E ela também publicou a primeira versão polonesa completa da Ars Amatoria, né? Que saiu em 2008 e depois novamente em 2016, e a primeira também tradução, né, da comédia Crises, de Piccolomini, em 2017. A monografia sobre Terêncio, Comet According Terence, foi premiada com o Bruckner Prize pela Polish Academy of Science em 2017, né? Um prêmio quadrienal para grandes feitos, né, na literatura e na filosofia, né? E ela também escreveu bastante, e tem escrito sobre teoria da tradução e também sobre a recepção da antiguidade na literatura e no filme, né? E no cinema. Eu apenas destaco que é a terceira vez que Ewa vem ao Brasil. Ela esteve aqui em 2013, na SBEC, uma mesa que eu organizei e que, inclusive, ela publicou num dossiê da Clássica, um artigo sobre o filme Covardes, né, recepção no cinema. Ela também esteve em 2018 no Congresso de Retórica, né, aqui em Belo Horizonte, e com ela eu tenho um projeto do Erasmus de cooperação entre o Departamento de Filosofia e o Departamento de Filologia, onde há também cinema, né, da Universidade de Poznań. A nossa segunda convidada é a professora Sandra Bianchet, que teve toda a sua formação na UFMG e também na USP, né? Fez o doutorado sob a orientação da querida professora Zélia, né? Fez um pós-doutorado na George Mason University, na área de cinema, com o professor Martin Winkler, e atualmente é professora titular de literatura latina na Universidade de Minas Gerais e presidente da FUMP. É admirável o trabalho dela, né? Porque ela publicou agora recentemente as traduções, né? A tradução das Metamorfoses de Apuleio, mas já havia publicado Satírico de Petrônio e foi diretora da FALE, né, agora presidente da FUMP, uma tarefa, né, importantíssima e com uma carga de trabalho colossal. Então, agradeço muito, Sandra, né, pela presença aqui, por seu trabalho, né, por essas duas atividades, né, na pesquisa, no ensino, três, ou mais até, né, e na FUMP, órgão tão importante, Fundação Mendes Pimentel. E nós teremos como debatedor Rodrigo Gonçalves, professor de latim da Universidade Federal do Paraná, que já recebeu também a professora Ewa no Paraná, quando ela veio a Belo Horizonte. Ela foi também até o Paraná, eles têm um departamento de estudos poloneses também, né? E o Rodrigo está fazendo atualmente um pós-doutorado sênior, com bolsa do CNPq, sob supervisão da professora Tereza Virgínia, no departamento, na Faculdade de Letras. Ele é professor associado de Língua e Literatura Latina na Universidade Federal do Paraná, com uma extensa produção também monográfica e de tradução, né? Fez também em Paris, com a Bárbara Cassan e Florence Dupont, um outro pós-doutorado. Ele é fundador do coletivo de poesia e tradução Peco da Louca, tradutor de Terêncio, Lucrécio, né? Acabou de sair a bela tradução em versos de Lucrécio, e também de Ovídio, né? Em breve teremos as metamorfoses de Ovídio, né? Então, eu começo passando a palavra, agradecendo a todos pela presença e passando a palavra à professora Ewa Skwara para ela fazer a apresentação. Ewa, I give the floor to you. Thank you very much for coming to talk with us about your work in theory and translation, and also your translation of Ovid. And it's really a pleasure and a honor to have you here. Please.
I'm honored, and I'm very glad that you invited me to your seminar and your debate about Ovid's Amatoria and about the problems of translation. So I would like to present you a bit about the second book, because I know that today we will discuss mainly the second part, the book number 2 of Ars Amatoria.
Sandra, desculpa.
Boa tarde a todos, boa tarde a todas. É uma grande honra para mim estar aqui, convidada pela Cecília e pela Júlia, né, com a grande oportunidade de aprender um pouco mais sobre o vídeo, revisitar a Ars Amatoria, livro 2, né, que é o foco aqui, e aprender muito com vocês também um pouco mais sobre o vídeo, né? No nosso encontro na semana passada, eu estive presente, foi uma grande oportunidade para ouvir Júlia e também o professor Matheus, né, tradutor da Ars Amatoria, cuja tradução eu usarei aqui, tá? Então, todas as citações da Ars Amatoria que vierem a ser apresentadas nos próximos slides foram extraídas da tradução do professor Matheus Trevisan, tá? Próximo slide, por favor. Eu vou começar falando um pouco, né? A minha especialidade não é poesia, é prosa, como Cecília indicou no início, né, nas suas palavras carinhosas e gentis em relação ao meu trabalho, né? Eu fiz a tradução do Satírico de Petrônio, que é prosa e metrum, e das metamorfoses de Apuleio, que são majoritariamente prosa, né? Prosa ficcional, romance latino. Mas eu começo a falar um pouco, então, de Ovídio, a partir de uma recepção crítica mais próxima, né, de Ovídio, menos de 100 anos, cerca de 100 anos, né, que nós temos em Quintiliano, registrado no livro 10 da Instituto Oratória. Eu acho que é um ponto de partida interessante para nós entendermos um pouco, ou avançar um pouco no entendimento, né, da obra de Ovídio. Pensando que lá atrás, né, nos anos 80, 90, Quintiliano, né, no livro 10, escreveu sobre a elegia e usou um termo que eu acho muito precioso para a discussão de hoje, para se referir à relação da elegia romana com os gregos, né? Então, Quintiliano lá, ele coloca que a elegia, ou na elegia, também provocamos os gregos, né? Esse plural aqui é da literatura latina como um todo. Provocamos os gregos. E destaca 4 autores no âmbito da literatura latina que tem o trabalho na literatura latina com versos com dísticos elegíacos. Na avaliação de Quintiliano, então, o principal autor é Tibulo, ao qual ele se refere como tersus atque elegans, podem ter sentido semelhante, mas o tersus dá o sentido de enxuto, polido, também um pouco vinculado a elegante, né? Quer dizer, sem excessos, né? Que é do verbo tergeo, né, que é enxugar, mas coloca uma rivalidade, uma comparação aí com o Propércio, né? Alguns acham, na opinião dele, Tibulo é o melhor, maxime videtur mihi auctor Tibulus, né? Então, o principal seria Tibulo, mas que para outros, Propércio ocuparia esse lugar de maxime tersus atque elegans. Fora dessa ambiguidade aí, dessa dupla possibilidade ele coloca Ovídio como mais lascivo do que ambos e Galo como mais duro, mais seco, né? O mais difícil, talvez nós pudéssemos pensar aqui, né? Bom, o meu foco do comentário aqui é no trecho que eu destaquei, que é o uso do verbo provocare. Provocou, em latim, no próximo slide, eu detalhei um pouco as acepções, porque eu entendo que por isso que eu chamei de preciosa esse comentário, essa parte de quintiliano para o comentário aqui, porque provocou, em latim, ele tem também o sentido de chamar para fora, forçar a sair. Né? Então, quando o Quintiliano diz que na elegia provocamos os gregos, quer dizer, ele está dizendo que os autores romanos rivalizam, competem, disputam, que é o sentido mais usual que essa frase de Quintiliano é interpretada, mas também no sentido literal, ele é precioso pensando em Ovídio, como Ovídio trabalha, né? O modelo grego, né, na sua obra, especificamente a Ars Amatoria aqui, né? Então, para provocar os gregos, né, eu vou tomar a acepção literal, pensando que Ovídio está chamando os gregos, forçando os gregos a sair. Então, o tempo todo ele está em diálogo com a literatura grega, na sua forma de escrever e na sua forma de fazer poesia. O seu fazer poético, Ovídio, ao longo da Ars Amatoria, ele está provocando os gregos, no sentido de forçar a saída dos gregos, e isso convocando o seu leitor a se lembrar dos gregos. Né? Então, seguindo essa linha, né, que eu estou propondo aqui, eu separei duas passagens da Ars Amatoria, do livro 2, né, em que nós temos uma comprovação, ou uma prova, eu poderia chamar de prova documental, de que Ovídio faz esse sentido usa o provocar no sentido de fazer sair, de convocar os gregos. Logo no início do livro 2 da Ars Amatoria, nos versos 3 e 4, Ovídio nos diz assim: o amante satisfeito, laitus amans, premia meus versos com a palma verdejante, e prefere-os aos dos velhos da Ascra e da Meônia. Né? Tá bem documentado, da referência que, né, o velho da Ascra seria Hesíodo e o velho da Meônia, Homero. Então, logo no início, Ovídio já nos coloca como dois parâmetros aí, né, para a leitura dos seus versos, dizendo que, como versos elegíacos, dísticos elegíacos, né, a sua presa, o seu aluno, o seu discípulos, de quem ele será magister ou preceptus, são os dois termos que ele usa, prefere os versos elegíacos aos hexâmetros datílicos dos velhos da Ascra e da Meônia, né, fazendo uma referência direta aí, né, e aí eu vou dizer, não tanto como uma negação da épica, como se costuma às vezes referir, mas uma provocação, uma convocação da épica e do verso hexâmetro datílico, usando aí o termo como Quintiliano descreveu. Né? Então, no slide seguinte, nós vamos perceber como que Ovídio dialoga com o velho da Ascra, entre aspas, né, o Exildo, aí em Trabalho e os Dias. Eu trouxe esse trechinho dos Trabalhos e os Dias na tradução de Alessandro Rolim de Moura, que é também professor, colega do Rodrigo, professor da UFPR também, né, em que a Exildo, indiscutivelmente, em tom didático, né, ele vai usar termos, formatos que Ovídio imita, nós poderíamos dizer, num contexto semelhante, que é o contexto de relação entre homem e mulher. Então, eu vou ler esse trechinho e comentar para percebermos como que Ovídio o tempo todo convoca, né, ele dialoga com Exildo, especificamente nesse trecho fica mais claro, né? Bom, Exildo nos diz da seguinte maneira, eu cito: no tempo certo, desposam uma mulher, quando faltarem não muitos anos para alcançares os 30, ou sem ultrapassares muito essa idade. É o casamento no tempo certo. A mulher, na puberdade, por 4 anos, deve se casar no 5º. Desposa uma virgem para que lhe ensine sábios costumes. Um verso suspeito, né? De preferência, casa-te com a mulher que mora perto de ti. Na sequência, o próximo slide, né? Exildo continua. Olhando bem tudo à volta, não desposes um motivo de riso para os vizinhos, pois um homem não consegue nada melhor que uma mulher boa, mas não há coisa mais horrível do que uma má. A espreita de jantares que ao homem, mesmo sendo vigoroso, assa-o sem chama e entrega a velhice prematura. Esse é um trecho de Os Trabalhos dos Dias, em que Exildo fala especificamente da relação entre homem e mulher, do casamento, da aproximação, de uma forma bem diferente do que Ovídio faz, mas usando as mesmas estruturas, né? Fica fácil observar aí o uso do imperativo, né? Os exemplos, o ensinamento, mas também a justificativa, os motivos, os exemplos. Então, toda essa estrutura didática, ela vem, né? Aparece na Amatoria, mas de uma forma invertida, paródica, irônica, como nós vamos pensar aí a forma de Ovídio provocar, né, os gregos, não só em termos de elegia, mas também como poesia didática. Esse é o exemplo que eu trouxe, há outros, né, mas para começarmos a pensar como que Ovídio convoca, né, quem ele chama lá no início, Exildo, o velho de Ascra. Para exemplificar, e aí os exemplos se multiplicam no livro 2, mas eu trouxe apenas um, né, pensando também na Maria Cecília, né, porque se refere a Helena. Eu trouxe um exemplo em que Ovídio provoca, né, ele convoca, ele faz sair quem ele está chamando lá nos versos 3 e 4 de velho da Meônia, né? Como que Ovídio convoca Homero? Nos versos 357 a 372. Eu vou ler, é uma sequência de versos, né? Eu dividi para ficar mais visível para vocês. Num contexto em que o ensinamento quer dizer, Ovídio ensina a seu aluno o tempo certo de abordar e de esperar a abordagem amada. Bom, então, o ensinamento, o preceito é: apenas uma breve demora é segura. Com o tempo, a justificativa vem, abrandam-se os cuidados, esvai-se o ausente e surge um novo amor. Então, esse é o preceito, o ensinamento, e como que Ovídio vai justificar ou vai exemplificar esse ensinamento que ele, como preceptor, passa para o seu aluno. Aí vem na sequência, a sequência toda de versos. No próximo slide, ele vai pegar exatamente o exemplo de Helena com Menelau. Enquanto Menelau estava fora, do Menelau sabes, Helena, para não deitar sozinha, recolheu-se de noite ao seio tépido do hóspede. Por que, Menelau, esse espanto? Tu partia só, sob os mesmos tetos ficavam teu hóspede e tua esposa. Na sequência, continua o ensinamento, né? Louco, o vídeo desse diálogo, né, simulado com Menelau, furiose, louco, tomado pelas fúrias, né? Você está fora de si. Confias pombas tímidas ao açor e entregas um farto rebanho de ovelhas ao lobo montés. Versos seguintes. Em nada erra Helena, nil Helene peccat. O verbo é interessante, é peccare. Em nada erra Helena. Nenhuma falta comete esse adúltero. Nili committit adulter. O que tu e qualquer um fariam, ele faz. Tu os obrigas. Essa é uma parte muito interessante da argumentação, da construção da argumentação. O verbo é cogere, né? Forçar, coagir, obrigar. Coges adulterium, dando tempusque locumque. Então, forças o adultério, tu os obrigas ao adultério, dando-lhes não só tempo, como também lugar. Tempo e lugar. Que seguiu ela, a não ser o teu conselho? Né? Então, transferindo toda a culpa aí para o Menelau. E nas palavras finais, o vídeo, né, na sequência dos versos, ele sentencia. Que faria ela, né, a Helena? Está sem marido. Há um forasteiro não rústico, nono rústicos, e teme deitar-se sozinha no leito vazio. Pense o que quiser o atrida. Absolva Helena de seu crime. Ela apenas usou a oportunidade que um marido benevolente, né, humani viri, lhe dera. Aqui, discutindo um pouco, né, a questão da tradução, talvez a única questão que eu colocaria, que poderíamos ter uma outra interpretação, seria na frase exatamente a central, que eu entendo desse trecho, que é Helenem ego crimine solvo. Tá? Na tradução sempre muito cuidada, né, do professor Matheus Trevisan, ele colocou absolva Helena de seu crime. Né? Talvez aqui pudéssemos deixar um pouco mais em aberto, né, pensando em absolva Helena do crime ou eu poderia pensar também da condenação ou da sentença, né? Pensando que talvez a gente pudesse não imputar aqui o uso, né? Ou confirmar o uso do possessivo aqui, absolvendo de seu crime, quer dizer, confere, né, que foi um crime, quando há pouco ele disse que não houve crime. Tá? Então, talvez discutir, trazendo à tona essa questão, né, da tradução, talvez aqui o seu tenha ficado um pouco mais direcionado, né, para um contexto que talvez não fosse exatamente, né, pensando aqui em outras leituras possíveis. Bom, esses são os dois exemplos que eu trouxe, né, com palavras iniciais, com breve comentário, para pensar que o tempo todo, ao longo da asa amatória, especificamente no livro 2, o vídeo vai nos convocar a prestar contas dessas nossas leituras, né? Então, as referências mitológicas, as referências literárias estão presentes lá o tempo todo, e ele vai provocar, né? Provoca os seus leitores, como Quintiliano diz. Então, eu vou encerrar esse meu breve comentário com o slide que eu comecei, o slide em que Quintiliano diz que na elegia provocamos os gregos. E o vídeo, né, mais lascivo do que ambos. Eu acho que é isso que a leitura da asa amatória, né, traz para nós, uma provocação de forma sempre muito lasciva. Muito obrigada pela atenção, agradeço a todos.
Muito obrigada, Sandra, pela essa exposição breve, mas tão clara e tão instigante para pensar, inclusive, né, a questão da retórica também, né, as conexões entre poética e retórica. Eu passo, então, agora, pedindo desculpas mais uma vez pela minha confusão, a palavra à professora Ewa Skwara. Ewa, now I give you the floor in the proper time. Thank you very much.
Flora, maybe the screen will be better in this situation. Sure. Okay, so are you sure that now it's my time, yes, right?
Your turn.
My turn, okay. Okay, so I hope you should see my screen. Are you can yes. You see it? Moment. Okay. 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 So once more, I will repeat that I'm very happy to be with you, and the invitation for me to take part in your discussion and seminar is a real value. And especially now when I'm the second speaker after Sandra, I can say that I'm very honored to take part in this discussion. I would like to show you the Ars Amatoria, as I understood from the former speech, from the former presentation. I would like to present you in a little bit different way. I will start with such a statement that The Art of Love is the most immoral poem ever written. And in fact, is a vademecum of lust, whose main theme, almost the only one, is heterosexual satisfaction. But don't worry, it's not my statement and it's not my opinion. This is the opinion of several philologists from the beginning of 20th century. The philologists who focused almost exclusively on the plot, ignoring that the author, the poet, played with convention, that he had such a dialogue with literary past, and that everything is prepared just like a joke. Actually, Ars Amatoria is a parody of didactic poem. Didactic poems were very popular in antiquity. Usually they presented in such works the knowledge of several professions, for example, hunting, fishing, sailing. Also, we know some didactic poems which focused on constellation of stars. So everything what could be learned was presented in such poems. Ovidius decided to make a parody because, in his opinion, and I think in the opinion of his contemporary Romans, love wasn't such a topic which could be learned. So it was the first thing which let us treat it as a parody. Ovidius prepared the poem in a specific way, using the characteristic features, characteristic for such a didactic poem's features. For example, he starts usually with in principio at the beginning, firstly, right? Later we have the description of the problem, and the next we have several examples and so on. Everything is prepared as love were the art which could be learned. Ovid teaches the art of seduction and love from such a scientific, but it's a rather mock scientific viewpoint. He emphasizes that he is a teacher of love, but careful reader will recognize in him mainly an erudite who, under the disguise of getting to know the secrets of Venice, actually gives lessons on ancient culture and literature. Today we must focus on the second book, which also, just as the first one, is prepared for men. But in the first one, Ovid tried to give some advices and instructions to men how to find a woman, how to start the love affair, how to start relationship. And here he decided that man needs some suggestions and instructions how to keep a love for a longer time, how to know the ways to perpetuate a feeling. And we will focus on this part of this poem. As I told you, he used this genre as good material to prepare a parody. So he tries to be very serious. He presents the specific topics in such a scientific way. So firstly, he makes such a formulation of a general principle. And later, with systematic accuracy, he described the principles, later the methods of conduct. He adds also some analogies from different sphere of daily life. For example, he very often used such a comparison from sailing, from agriculture, how to take care, how to develop some things. So he used such analogies from daily life and other professions. And of course, he also adds some examples. Usually, mainly the examples are from mythology, but not always. Mythology is not the only one thing which is taken as an example. As I told you, he prepared this as a kind of parody. So we can see that the poem, and especially the second book, because today we are talking about book number 2, is prepared just like an intensive course on love. So the course is divided into several smaller topics, we could say several classes or several lessons, and each lesson is focused on one specific suggestion or instruction. And when we will look at the whole book number 2, we will see that between, okay, probably you can't see this. Okay, you must trust me that here's introduction and that this is the end and announcement of the book number 3. So between the introduction and the end, we have several lessons devoted to specific problems connected with love. In my translation, I decided that the book, the poem Ars Amatoria, should be read by readers, by people for pleasure. It must be light, funny. It must be. They should be delighted after reading. So I tried to avoid all difficulties. And I decided that it would be very maybe not very, but it could be maybe difficult for non-classicist readers to read the whole text. You know that each of books has more than 800 verses. So I decided that maybe it would be useful for readers to read smaller parts, smaller paragraphs or chapters, just like lessons. And I must also add that in Polish literature, we had a poet who prepared who followed or who took some inspiration from Ovid and prepared such Cupid lessons. So it was also a hint which I decided to use. So I divided the whole material into smaller chapters. As you see, usually they have about 40, sometimes 10, sometimes more, just like here, 20 lines. And firstly, he starts with the mythological story about Daedalus and Icarus, and later I marked here, and later we have the longer story about creation of the world, and the third longer story, mythological story, is about Mars and Venus. They are longer, separated from the earlier material and from the text which will follow this mythological stories. So I decided to make the one unit of lessons. And because each of the mythological stories described by Ovid is introduced to his poem in a special purpose, to show some rules or some instructions or some thoughts by Ovid, I decided to give an explanation. So Daedalus and Icarus are described in the book to show that wings are not too easy to bind. If you will think that Amor also has wings, you will know that Daedalus and Icarus is a good example that everything what is flying is unpredictable, is difficult to follow, to catch it. And Amor is also just like Icarus and Daedalus. Amor flies where he wants. Creation of the world is the good reason to show that the power of love is the biggest power in the world. And Mars and Venus, the third longer story from mythology, is the story which we already know from Homer. This is the story about the jealous husband of Venus, Volcano, who decided to catch his wife in flagranti with Mars, and he prepared such a golden net to catch them. But of course, it wasn't enough for him, and he decided to invite all gods to show them that his wife is unfaithful. And poet Ovid presented them in such a way that the conclusion is that sometimes better is not to know, or sometimes better is not to unveil the secret. Ovid says that later Volcano regretted that his trick was so successful. So you see, the mythology is very often introduced in the poem, but it's introduced in very mockery way. Between or among this mythological funny stories, we have several lessons, and poet starts with them describing what way of preserving love is ineffective, and the answer is clear: magic. Magic means nothing in love. And later, of course, if magic can't do anything, so the question is, what could be successful? Successful are virtues, spiritual virtues. So just as eloquence, kindness, submission. And later, the poet comes back to such an idea which was already described and presented in elegiac poetry by Thibaut and Properts, that love is a kind of war. And just in love, just like in war, everything is acceptable. So the poet, in very mockery, funny way, describes what can help a young lover to perpetuate his love. So first of all, he suggests to have good relations with maids, because they are very useful. But the poet warns that the young man shouldn't have the love affair with the lady and with her maid at the same time. Gifts are very successful also, but Ovid says that poetry is not a good idea, because there are only few girls who could appreciate such a gift. Usually, Ovid says, even Homerus, if he doesn't have jewelry, will be kicked out. So you see, gifts must be jewelry or something bought for a good price. Lover should consult the mistress, because in every case, because when she is consulted, when everything in his life is consulted with her, she has such an impression that she must be very important for him. So it also helps to keep the love for longer. Flattery always helps in such a situation, but also illness is a good occasion for courtship. But the poet says that young men should be very careful, because they must take care, but they shouldn't force girls to take bitter medicine, because later the lovers will be associated with such an unpleasant situation. Ovid also described absence, which you had possibility to see and to listen some minutes ago by Sandra. There are some benefits and some dangers of absence. Betrayal is also such a thing which can help and can be very betraying for love. Jealousy, this is the spice of love. And later, in very mockery way, Ovid presents Apollo's recommendation. The main of them is to get to know himself or herself, because this book is presented, is devoted to men. So Apollo, as Ovid says, recommends to get to know himself. What does it mean? It's not the philosophical rule, if you suspect. No, not this time. Ovid says that every man should know what is his virtue. So if a man has a good voice, he should sing or tell some poems. But if he doesn't have, he shouldn't do it. So know himself, it means know what will be the most useful for love. The poet describes also sorrows in love, which are usually, because we know from Greek poetry that amor is and bitter and sweet. So these two tastes are combined together. So as you see, Ovid several times has a dialogue with a literary past, with Apollo's recommendations, with Greek poetry. The whole poem is plenty of such allusions to literary works of former poets. Later, after the story about Mars and Venus, probably you will not be surprised, the poet says that the main virtue of men is discretion. They shouldn't talk, the elegant man should be a gentleman and never discuss his relationship with women. Poet also suggests to have generosity for shortages of beauty, because he says beauty is not the main point in love. And after this, he says, okay, beauty is such a feature which pass away with age. So you should also think, the poet says, about advantages of the older ladies. Ovid says that it doesn't mean that older ladies are not attractive. They are much more elegant usually than young girls, and they have bigger practice, and this experience can make them a real artists in love. And the last chapter, the last lesson, is about bedroom, how to behave in bedroom. And I will not describe this at this moment, because I think that it will be time for eroticisms. Okay. So let's start from the beginning of, from the first statement of Ovid, who said that magic means nothing. I prepared a presentation this way, that on the left side you usually have the Latin text with the, oh my God, I don't know how to. In the middle, this is my Polish translation, which will be useful later. And on the right side, I put the text in English translation. And the poet says that herbs submitted to magic will not make love a never ending. It's not this way. If you could love, if you could keep love with a spell, Odysseus would be with Circe today, and Jason with Medea. A love potion is nothing. It brings only madness. So abandon the tricks. If you want to be loved, you must be lovable, because pretty face will not give you love. Means nothing. It's easy to say, if you want to be loved, to be lovable, but how to do it? And the poet, as a scientist, as a teacher, is well prepared, and he will teach the reader lesson by lesson how to do it, how to be lovable. And the poet says that the sweet form, the beauty, is absolutely fragile. So nobody should think that it will be enough to be loved. Soon men will find white hair on his head, the wrinkles, maybe for men is not so awful wrinkles, but he will have it. So what's to do? They can't stop the time, but they should nourish their mind. What does it mean, nourish the mind? Cultivate, for example, the thoughts, to read good literature, to read, to practice philosophy, because only the mind, the knowledge, will stay with the man till his end, as poet says, till the funeral pyre. So only mind is stable, and this is the reason that he will be loved by women. So he must cultivate his thoughts and learn 2 languages. Which languages? No, that's clear, Portuguese and Polish, we could say. But of course, the Ovid meant Greek and Latin. And we have at the end a methodological example, which must be the proof that this is the good way, not beauty, but the virtues of mind. And he says, Odysseus wasn't handsome, but he was very eloquent. And this is the reason why he was loved by all goddesses. So, value of education is the main point, is the basis. But it's not one and only thing which can make you lovable. The next one is what ancient Latin elegiac poets called Cervicium Amoris. Literally, we could say slavery of love, or a slave of love, or a slave to love. In any case, the young man, the lover, must behave just like a slave. He shouldn't quarrel with her. He shouldn't fight with a girl. Ovid says that quarrels and fights are only for wives and husbands. If they are lovers, they must be very gentle. So he suggests, if you have a quarrel, give up and you will be the winner. Why? Because you will get love. Play always the role which will be given to you by her. Behave just as she expects. So if she condemns, condemn. If she approves, approve. When she says yes, you should say yes. When she denies, you should deny. She loves, you love. But remember to cry if she cries. So she should give you rules how you should behave. This funny description of mirror reflects, which should be presented by young men, is a very clear allusion or association to text by Terence, to description given by Parasite in Terence's comedy, The Eunuch. There is a parasite who decided, who described a new way of flattering. He says that he is very successful, and whatever his masters say, he prize. As you see, I prize. If the masters say the opposite, I prize also. And when they deny, I deny. When they affirm, I affirm. And shortly, I do everything what they expect. And because of this, I'm very successful. So I don't want to say that Ovid has stolen this idea. No, it's a rather dialogue with literary past. Later, Ovid suggests to just behave exactly like a slave. He says if she's outside and she needs an umbrella, you should take the umbrella, keep the umbrella over her head instead of her slave. If she is going and through the street and the street is crowded, you should make a place for her. It's the role, usually the role of slaves. You should bring up the footstool to slip the sandal, and it will be very useful for you because you will have possibility to touch and to see and to touch her feet. When the weather is awful and you are trembling because of cold weather, you shouldn't be terrified, and even you should to suggest her to warm her hands on your breast. Of course, it will be useful, but trust me, as Ovid says, you will be delighted. So you think that poets suggest to do everything just like slave, and at the end he says, if she wants to take off her clothing, you should keep the mirror, although you are a noble man, and mirrors are such a work, it's usually typical for slaves. But trust me, it's very useful and you will be delighted. Even he says, even if you must arrive somewhere, be before time and stay as long as it's only possible. She calls you, drop everything and run, and nothing can stop you on this way. And when she is coming back home from the late night dining dinner, and she calls for a slave with light, you should go instead of the slave. So you see, the poet says that the good way to keep or to perpetuate a love is to behave, to be ready to be a slave for her mistress. And even if the door is closed and you must use such a window which is very up, and it's dangerous because you can kill yourself, you shouldn't hesitate, because when you will risk your life for her, it will be the proof that you really love her. So you see that the ways in which the young man should behave, sometimes are very risky. Benefits and dangers about the absence already was described by Sandra, so I don't want to repeat it again. I only wanted to tell you that this is a very good example how mythology was used by Ovid. Usually, we never before Ovid think in this way that the man who is responsible for Trojan War is Menelaus, because he left his young wife under the same roof with a guest, and she only used the suggestion. The nights were very cold, and the guest was a gentleman. He offered her to warm her, and she only used this hint, nothing more. So you see, such mockery ways of presenting mythology or using mythology to give a proof that the instructions or the suggestions are right. There are plenty of in the poem. At the end, I would like to say some words about my Polish translation, and I came back to the slide which you already saw, to tell you how I did it and why I did some things. I Polish literature, usually everything what is funny presented in as a poetry. So I decided that the poem by Ovid, which is full of jokes, and it's a kind of eruption of jokes and wits, should be translated in verses as a poetry. Till the end of 19th century, the whole poetry in Poland was in rhyme and rhythm. So if I wanted to make such an impression that the text is rather old, because Ovid is from antiquity, I should use the 13-syllable verse with rhyme. Rhyme A, B, A, B. As you see, every second line is combined with rhyme. Siłą, miłość, minęło, medeo, mania, kochania, fortele, wiele. So I wanted to imitate a little bit, of course, elegiac couplet with hexameter and pentameter. So I decided that every second verse should look the same, in the same way. So I decided the rhyme and this order, A, B, A, B. Of course, it's only an imitation, right? It would be difficult to imitate the rhythm, the normal rhythm, because as you remember, in pentameter we have the last accent. We have both between caesura and direza. We have both accents on the last syllable, oxytonon. So it would be difficult in Polish language to imitate it, because we have only a small group of words with one syllable, and the accent in Polish language is on the second syllable, so paroxytonic accent we have. So it would be absolutely impossible to present nearly 3,000 verses with such accent at the end of the verse. So I decided to use this 13-syllable verse. It's typical for Polish poetry, the comedies. Some comedies are written in such verses in Polish literature. And also we have tradition that all poems, just like heroic poems in antiquity are in hexameter, we have in this 13-syllable verse. If it's imitate, I don't know, you must judge it. I will read we will do a small experience, a small experiment, sorry. I will read a bit of elegiac couplet and later my translation, and you will see if it imitate or not. Fasias esoniden circe circe tenoisset ulixem simodoser vari carmine postet amor negdata profuerint palentia filtra fuellis filtra nocenta nimis zvimque furoris habent. Żadne zioła poddane czarodziejskim siłom nie sprawią, by uczucie nigdy nie minęło. Gdyby można zaklęciem uratować miłość, Odes byłby dziś Skirkę, a Jazon z Medeą. This 13-syllable verse is built in such a way that the first two caesura, we have the 7 syllables, and later the second part has always 6 syllables. This is very regular. And the next thing which I decided to introduce to my translation, to make the translation more familiar, more easier for readers, and make them such an impression that it's not difficult to read it, I decided that proper names, as you see in this verse, for example, Phasias esonidens kirkatenois satolixam, this proper names are exchanged with easier or more common or better known. So Phasius, as you probably remember, this is the adjective from Phasis River, modern day Rioni River in Western Georgia, in Asia, not in the United States, in Georgia. So this is the territory of Colchis, the territory where Medea lived. So Phasias is the equal to Medea. So I used in the Polish translation Medea. Esonidon is this patronymic name after Aeson, the father of Jason. So I used just Jason because everyone in Poland knows Medea and Jason, and nobody knows except the classical philologists who is Phasias and Aesonidon. Kirka, Circe, I left it because it's very common. So especially after the serious Games of Thrones. And Ulixem, this is the Latin version of the name Odysseus. So I use Odysseus because it's more common and more popular in Poland. So I use Odys. This is the Polish version of this. Of course, there would be plenty of a long list of problems which we could discuss. For example, the one of the obstacles on the way for translator is stylistic means, which sometimes are comparable with jokes in Plautus' comedies. Plautus's comedies that are so sophisticated and difficult to be translated. In the first book, there are plenty of problems with topography of places, because probably you remember from the seminar last week that Ovid described plenty of places where women we just reach where the plenty of places where a young man can meet women, interesting women. Okay, of course, one of the biggest problems is eroticism and love violence. But eroticism and love violence, I would like to discuss last week when we will talk about the last book of Ars Amatoria, which was devoted to women. And I think it will be good opportunity, a good occasion to discuss if Ovid was a chauvinist or a misogynist, or she was first feminist. I think it will be good. I will leave it today as an invitation and introduction to our discussion last week. And I think it's today for this moment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And Julia, please, because I don't have camera, but I have a problem with my camera.
No, you can say, Cecilia, no problem. We want to thank Ewa. It was a wonderful presentation, very clear and very clear. And also you showed this funny side of Ovid poetry. This is very important. And I think next week we'll have much more to discuss. And I'll pass now the word to Rodrigo so he can start the debate. Thank you very much.
So,
my pleasure.
thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Julia and Cecilia and Ewa, for your wonderful presentation. I loved it. and Sandra too for the very inspiring words. I will try to, since we don't have questions in the chat so far, if you want to write your questions down, we can select some of them. I will talk about some things I thought while listening to you both, especially things that concern this difficulty with specifically with this text by Ovid, which is at the same time very inspiring and also disgusting in some parts. It's difficult to read that today. It's well, of course, we have all of those very clear moments of a kind of tongue-in-cheek way of presenting the themes. Of it doesn't actually seem to be that terrible person when he proposes all the things he's proposing about male domination and sexual violence. And it seems that we have a very sophisticated kind of parody, as Ewa said, and also provocation, as Sandra said. And this kind of provocation is interesting. Peel layers of the text and see, for example, Hesiod in the back of the text. And also we can see some prefigurations of the way of it's going to treat myth in the Metamorphoses. And I personally, since I have been for the last 7 years immersed in Lucretius's poem, I can see that too. I can see a lot of Lucretius here. And in a sense, I can see that the way he treats tradition in order to appear a little bit flamboyant or misogynist, and at the same time liberating for women and trying to give a voice and to purport or to promote equal pleasure in sex for both men and women. All of that reminds me a lot of Lucretius's poem, and I will try to just present some ideas for discussion, if I may. Is it okay if I speak in English, or for Sandra and I can comment in both languages, but I think it's easier if I just go along. I like the idea of provocation. I never thought of that regarding this poem. I really like it, actually. And I think we can use it as a reading key, or we can switch the text using that. We can switch it, and we can read it backwards and upwards and upside down and do a lot of things with that text. And I was thinking, for example, about some of the topics that I see in this text that were treated very seriously by Lucretius, for example, are the problem of, first of all, the difference between a cosmology or a cosmogony in which chaos becomes the universe, as we see here in Book 2 in Ars, Amatoria, and also the way that Venus is given a kind of a supreme power after that. That reminds me of Lucretius. Also, the last part of Book 4 of Lucretius's poem is terribly misogynistic and racist at the same time, when he mentions the defects he sees in women and how a person can ameliorate those defects by calling the women with different names, just like Ovid does here. So it really sounds like an echo here. And also at the same time, in this final part of Book 4, Lucretius also advocates for the same treatment of pleasure for women and men. But what I want to say here is that if Lucretius is taking himself very seriously all the time, as if he knows about everything, he is never actually ironic, or at least not that much as Ovid. Even though he is very serious about that, when he, for example, concedes that the pleasure for men and women should be the same, because otherwise women wouldn't give themselves to men such as, he gives other examples, mares wouldn't actually receive the male horses, or female dogs wouldn't receive the male dogs if they didn't feel any pleasure at all. So at the same time that he seems to be, you know, conceding a space that's new for women, like, oh, women should also feel pleasure, he compares women to horses and dogs right after that. So it's really, it sounds as if Ovid is echoing those serious ways that didactic poetry treated some very complicated issues. And if we look at them from afar, we can see that it's kind of really ironic and sometimes sarcastic. Of course, that doesn't avoid what for me seems to be a problem that we are now, not really a problem, but maybe a solution. We are actually finally having, we're finally coming to see that some things do not age well. For example, the question of the maid, I think it's just to make a very brief story out of it. Ewa is probably familiar, and most of you probably are too, with the Broadway musical, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which is an adaptation of several plays by Plautus and Terence, by Bert Sheave-Love and Larry Gilbert, with music by Stephen Sondheim, recently passed away. It's a brilliant musical, and it became a wonderful film, but it's from the 60s. And even though it's actually criticizing a lot of ancient customs and ways of life and ways of treating women and slaves, etc., it does so through humor. And some of the jokes are not cool anymore. For example, since it's a kind of a Roman comedy, there's a young lady who is presented as a very, very dumb, stupid girl, and a young boy. She's not stupid, she's naive, and the boy is stupid, as usually is the case in Roman comedy. So the young couple are idealists, and they are in great love with each other and stuff. But one of the things that the slave does in order to move the plot and try to bring both of them together is to kidnap the girl from the brothel in which she's supposed to be sold by a soldier, just like in any Roman comedy. And they kidnap her and they put it and they put her inside the young man's father's house. And they say, in order to cover for the story, that she is a maid, a new maid. And since the girl is not aware that she is living in the boy's father's house, and the father is not aware about who she is. Oh, I'm really sorry. I just have to open the door here very quickly. Sorry.
Ewa, can I ask you to read some more verses in Polish while we wait for Rodrigo? Okay, he's back. Because I like the sound of
I'm so
Polish
sorry.
reading.
Oh, Rodrigo is back.
I was explaining the joke. So she's not aware of what's going on, and she's inside the house. And when the old man sees the girl, she's very attractive. The slave has to invent something else, and he said she's the new maid. And then the old man, as is usually in a Roman comedy, says, "Ooh, a maid, I like that." And then he starts to sing a song with all the male older characters. And the song is, "Everybody ought to have a maid." And the song makes a lot of sexual jokes about the relationships of masters and slaves and maids, and also represents a lot of menial work being done in the background. And they are actually dancing upon the slaves. So it's a very, very infamous song. And the choreography and the clip, everything is actually very disgusting, but it is actually a very sharp criticism on the way the ancients treated slaves, etc. The problem is the joke got old. And if we see that today, even if it's okay, even if it's like inside the plot, it makes sense as everything else in the film, we cannot but feel a little bit overwhelmed. It's like it's a bit too much. For example, almost at the same time, we have Neil Young singing a song, "Oh, a man needs a maid." It's in the 60s or 70s. I think it's in the early 70s, in Harvest, one of his most important albums. So you hear that a man needs a maid. What's he talking about? Today we don't we can't stand that. And more recently, just to pick this history of the way things are evolving. Another singer-songwriter, Bill Callahan, reinvented Neil Young's song, and he made a song which is called and has a chorus that says, "A man needs a woman or a man to be a man." So that's the new way of thinking about those relationships. So what I'm trying to say here is that Ovid seems to be criticizing and sarcastically pointing fingers at behaviors he probably doesn't like or approve of. But when we read him today, this book, it's actually a little bit unsettling. It's a little difficult. So I would like to hear some words from you both about that. And the last thing I would like to say is thank you, Eva, for reading your translation aloud for us. It's so beautiful to listen to that. And I'm sure it's a wonderful translation. And I was actually curious. It was one of my questions here. And I will end by asking also, do you think that the myths of Icarus and Daedalus, and maybe the one by Vulcan, also mean that Ovid is portraying himself as better than Daedalus, better than Vulcan, because he, it's difficult to put wings on love, but in book 2, he's trying to, put wings and hold love and not let it fly away. So maybe I was just thinking out loud. I'll let you speak a little bit. I'm sorry for too much of your time.
Who is the first? Sandra, it's your floor, it's your screen, sorry.
So you can answer his questions, Ewa. I think you should talk first.
Okay. Okay. The first question was the problem which you discussed was about aging the ancient text, and not only ancient text, because during your words, I thought about probably everyone knew Bridget Jones's Diary. The film, do you know Bridget Jones's Diary? Film from the last millennium? No? Okay, I see the face of Sandra, so okay, so forget it. Someone okay, so forget it. I wanted to say that everything is aging, and some films which were from the last millennium now are not acceptable. For example, when you will watch some films from 80s or 90s, you will see some scene. I'm not talking even about 60s or 70s. Some scenes where the boss, for example, seduce at work a secretary. Today, it's absolutely unbelievable, right? It's not acceptable. Such a situation that it would be the love affair in the office. So I think that our expectation and some rules in official life and private life too are changed, are being changed. So we must be prepared that the text, the movies, the plays from decades will not be acceptable or will be boring or not as understandable. But talking about antiquity, it's a real problem, because we are discussing all the time. Every new group of students, with every group of students, the problem comes back again and again. I think that the solution is education, just like in Ovid's poem, the education, because if we are talking about literature for pleasure or something what we suggest, oh, just read it, you will like it. Maybe it's not a good idea to suggest such problematic text as, for example, Ovid's Ars Amatoria. But if we treat it as teachers, as classical philologists, as when we have a course of history of literature, I think that we should show, read the text, the plays, the performances, but not without critical notes. I think that the key to understanding is an education. When we will explain that the social position of women in antiquity were completely different, and when we will discuss how women, for example, in ancient Greece were treated, especially this from the noble families, why the Roman and Greek comedies presented women in such a way that they even very often even didn't appear on the stage, although the whole play was about love to her, maybe they will understand that it was completely different culture. I have a good example, just like Ovid. I have a good example. When I was a student, I plenty of time I had such an experience that I read some literature, some books about antiquity, some introductions to translated works from antiquity. The works were written in 60s, in 50s and 60s. And the problem was that that time Poland was a communistic country, and every book started with the problem of slavery. Now we are prepared, we are familiar with such a thought that antiquity was based on slavery, and nobody discussed that it's disgusting, right? We are talking about women, we are talking about attitude to love, attitude to women rights, but we are not talking anymore about slavery. But this is the most disgusting thing. And you will not find any book from antiquity which wouldn't mention, sometimes it's not written, it's not spoken, but in the background we have slavery, and we don't discuss this, that we read the text which for example glorify the system based on slavery. Now we have in Europe a big discussion about Julius Caesar, especially because of Germany, because as you know there are plenty of in his commentaries there's plenty of description of Germany, and this is the question, if it can be read or not. So I think that such a question will repeat in every century, in every time. Only we are changed, and in every decade we have another sensitive point. Now, and the first 2 decades of new millennium, we are very sensible on the point of women and the women rights, right? I must tell you, I think that I will not break any secret, but we have in group some students who are during the correction of sex, correction of gender. So the problem is it possible to discuss with them the play Barterans, the unique, where the balance between two genders as the main subject of the play, right? In this case, I think that education, explanation, critical approach is the right way to discuss such things. Of course, I don't want to suggest that we should, for example, stage unique in the theaters because, okay, why not? No, I think that some works are already crossed out from the mainstream of culture, but as scholars, I think that we shouldn't agree for canceling some works from antiquity. Of course, that the canon will be changed. That's normal. I think in your country also the books which are read now at school are completely different than the list of canon which was in your school. So it's always it's normal that it will be changed, but I would make a line between the main culture, the mainstream. For this mainstream, probably some works are lost forever, and the path for scholars. And in this way, I think that the education, explanation, critical approach is the good way to read, to treat, to keep the title still in the canon. That's all, I think. There was the second question about Daedalus and Mars and Venus. I think that yes, these two myths were very often discussed. I remember probably 10 years ago, Alison Sharrock wrote such a book where she tried to convince the reader that the story about Daedalus is the projection of his future fate, because in his probably in Tristia there is the very similar picture described with that the poet is just like Icarus, that the water closed his mouth, so he can't write anymore. So I think that absolutely I agree with such a interpretation that the suggestion to fly not too high to the sun and not too low is the suggestion to keep aura mediocritas, to keep the way middle too dangerous. I think so. With Volcano, that he was more clever than Volcano, right? That he caught it, but he didn't. I don't think so. I must honestly say I never thought of it. I must read it again in Latin translation and focus. Maybe I will find some hints. I don't know. I don't say no, not at all, but just no. I must think of it. That's all.
Thanks, Eva. Sandra, would you like to say?
Rodrigo, I'd like just to add some words about the first discussion. Because I like to whenever highlighted that the text should be understood in its space, time, and culture. Because something that I would like to say is that Ovid, most of the time, he overlaps some layers of high reference, methodological and literary reference with low, ordinary, everyday images. So sometimes it's a part of his didactic to compare women and love with something everyone would understand from the field, from everyday life, from nature. I mean, so sometimes it's part of his teaching lesson. So I think this should be taken into consideration too when we read Ars Amatoria. Only that.
Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, of course. I think I was, proposing some provocations because it's actually very interesting. Because at the same time, it's a repulsive text, but it's a wonderful and fascinating text in so many aspects. So this is part of the richness that makes us want to read and talk about it. And yes, I agree with Ewa. We have to read those texts with some critical mind and mindsets, not actually trying to blame Ovid for everything that is bad and is perceived as bad today, and for obvious reasons, but also, in a sense, not trying to isolate, I think, the text from its original, in its original context from the rest of its reverberations. I think it's really difficult to do that, because at the same time, we look for, projections in the text that we see in the text into the distant past in Hesiod or in Grecians, but we don't. If we don't do that, the same thing with the future, it becomes a little bit complex. I think a last thing I would like to say is that this is something that only came to me while I was listening to you both. Is that I think there is more to the relationship between Ars Amatoria and Lucretius than meets the eye. Maybe there is a lot written about that, but I was thinking about this image of the bitter medicine. That's a very interesting way of putting, of a poet to put himself as a poet administering medicine, because Lucretius says explicitly that his poem as a tool is actually the honey that we put around the bitter medicine, which is the philosophy he's trying to teach, in order for the child not to be deceived, but to be less displeased by the content. So if he is actually saying that he is giving the medicine, as bitter as it is, through a veil of poetry, which is a kind of a sweet thing, Ovid seems to say that, well, you have to sweeten everything up, but when it's time to give the medicine, you just, get out. Don't give the bad medicine. So this is also a profession of a poetic creed, I think. It's a way of looking at didactic poetry. So it seems that the content is not actually important. What's important for Ovid is to show himself as a wonderful poet. So he seems to be like, using very difficult and dangerous content in order to show up, to be to do what he does best, which is to write poetry. And just the last tiny bit of thing that was an epiphany for me is an attempt to think of the asymmetry of the three books as a way of recognizing men's incapacities in the love life. Because if you have a book for men and a book for women, and the second book is trying to teach men how to, hold on to love, women don't seem to need that because they're smarter. So it seems that that can be read as a kind of men need to be taught because they're stupid. So this is of it in a feminist key. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but thank you. I don't know if we have time for more discussions. Oh yeah, we have a question by Cecília. Could you please comment, Ewa, on Ariadne and Dionysus in book 1?
Yes, yes, because probably Cecilia, remember my lecture about the painting by Titian. But what does it mean, passion that is not connected to ours? This example was given by Ovid to explain that even women in despair can be very attractive, and it's also very funny. Very funny suggestion that women should be despair, even if in such terms when they are abandoned by lovers, because this history teaches that when one love is finished, the second love is waiting nearby, and maybe it will be better. We must remember that the lover Theseus, lover of Ariadne, was exchanged by the god Dionysius. So I think that it was sarcastically, we can say that it was a good exchange, right? But this story is described to show that women, even with tears and not well prepared, with such dirty gown clothes, can be attractive, because Ariadne was loved by Dionysius in such a very difficult situation. So, but I don't remember what Cecilia meant, writing that is not connected to art.
Yeah, perhaps we can discuss next week, because it's a more, I think, complex subject relating ars or techne with passion and the eruptness of love without any artificial gain, you see? But perhaps you can return to this next week, because it is related also to construction, to even to writing, let me say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bom, dado o avanço da hora, acredito que podemos já caminhar para o final. Due to time, Ewa is in Poland. It's very late right now too. I think we can just finish for today, and next week we can talk more. And I would like to thank Sandra, Ewa, and Rodrigo for the presentations, for the debate, and to say that next week you have more, the last book, but we'll have vamos fechar com chave de ouro, né? Como dizemos em português. And thank you, Ewa, also for reading your translations. I hope next week you can read more in Polish so you can listen. The sonority, it's very, very beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Obrigada, Júlia.
Thank you.
Rodrigo e Ewa. It was a pleasure being with you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great,
Thank you.
great seeing you, talking to you. We're waiting for you in Curitiba another time, once more, I hope, Ewa,
Thank you very much.
when the world is back.
Obrigada. Thank you, Ewa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.